And NewsNation's own Leland Vittert has spent time himself in Ukraine covering Russia's initial invasion in 2014. He joins us now to explain the pieces of Vladimir Putin's puzzle. Leland, good morning.
Hey, Rudy, nice to see you.
Okay, so Vladimir Putin, this is a man who was trained by the KGB, who routinely kills his political opponents. He has a history of using chemical weapons. What motivates him?
Right, understand the man, and you sort of can predict a little bit better and understand what he's doing. Vladimir Putin views the breakup of the Soviet Union as the greatest tragedy of the 20th century, and he is here to avenge that embarrassment that was perpetrated upon Mother Russia. So he wants that. He wants Russia to become a world power once again. He views himself as a Stalin-esque figure or a Khrushchev figure, that he is going to bring back the greatness of the Soviet Union by really any means possible. The other thing that motivates him, probably number one, is what motivates any person, which is staying alive, number one, and number two, staying in power. And if he loses this war in Ukraine, both of those things really come into question. There is very, very little life expectancy or job opportunities for an ex-Russian president, which is the one thing that Vladimir cannot have, is a failure that would lead to his ouster.
So Vice President Kamala Harris yesterday at that press conference in Poland saying she wants a war crimes investigation into his acts in Ukraine. What, if anything, would that do to Putin and to his ambitions?
It would appear nothing, because there have been calls for investigations into Vladimir Putin and the Russian military in the past. They've used chemical weapons in the past. You made a very good point at the top, which is that this is a man who was trained by the KGB. Lubyanka prison, which was headquarters to the KGB, used to have gutters in the bottom of the basement that were specially put in because there was so much blood from all of the executions of the people they killed. The threat of Lubyanka, the threat of justice by the Russian means, if you will, is far, far worse than any kind of war crimes tribunal at The Hague or war crimes investigation. That's something akin to a traffic ticket versus what the kind of justice, if you want to call it that is met out by the KGB and by the Russian military if they're unhappy. So the idea that somehow the threat of a war crimes investigation would mean anything to the Russians probably shows a real fundamental misunderstanding of what motivates them.
Well, so far the solution, besides strengthening the NATO partners with troops, et cetera, has been sanctions. And so far, they've really done nothing to slow Putin down or the troops carrying out his commands. Sanctions have worked in places like South Africa, but they have not worked in Iran, Cuba, Venezuela. Was there ever any reason to believe they would work here in Russia, or that they will work?
Well, I don't know if there was ever a reason to believe that they would work, especially in South Africa. It took decades for sanctions and international pariah state status to work there, and a different group of people with sort of different democratic norms in their history. But when it comes to Russia, it's clear that Vladimir Putin is going to continue on the action that he's on until he is forced to pay a price that he did not calculate. The Ukrainians have started to do that. He certainly did not calculate the number of dead Russian soldiers there were going to be, the amount of bad publicity that was going to be, the way the international community and the world was going to coalesce around Ukraine and tell their story, on and on and on and on. What it appears as though isn't going to be necessary for Vladimir Putin to change his behavior is really up to the Europeans. And we're going to explore this tonight a little bit, but especially the Germans, the Italians, others who buy a large amount of natural gas from Russia, who buy his oil, that if they are so offended by what they see on television and so offended by his behavior in Ukraine, that it outweighs their cost domestically to stop buying Russian natural gas, to be willing to sort of have their citizens go without and sacrifice heat, for lack of a better term, and energy and expense, and that therefore they cut Putin off monetarily. That might change his calculus. Short of that, and short of a greater threat of war, since the White House does not want to provoke Vladimir Putin, it seems difficult to understand why he would stop now.
All right, Leland Vittert, thank you for waking up so early with us. I know it's a long day for you, and you can watch On Balance with Leland Vittert every weeknight on NewsNation. It starts at 7 Eastern, 6 o'clock Central.
Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to click on the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.